IndieBio is the first biotechnology accelerator. We fund small companies, small biotechnology companies, and we take them to sort of investment level competence in four months. And a lot of the companies are food companies. And we have experienced what we think is a revolution in the way the world food chain is going to be working. It's on a very different level than some of the people working here. And we're just excited to tell you about it and hear what you guys think about it. We find that vegans are very excited about it. Sometimes a little bit suspicious, and so let's talk about that too. The exciting thing about being an accelerator program is that Ryan Betancourt and I help run it, and we get to make bets. We get to make, help start 30 companies a year. And so we can put some companies in there that are huge risks, and they have huge opportunities, and they may fail. And that's one of the fun parts of our job, is just letting people do something completely crazy. And one of the most crazy, awesome things that we've done is related to food. Just a quick note for all the biotechnologists. Even as the processor speeds and process sizes for microchips have sort of started to stabilize now, and Moore's Law has started plateauing, biotechnology is experiencing incredible acceleration in terms of the costs and abilities of biotechnology to get data in, and as such, the iterative cycle for development is getting cheaper and more powerful. We really feel, one of our theses is that biotechnology is now ready to influence almost every human technology and every human market, because biotechnology, unlike computers, touch material things. They create materials of all kinds, especially kinds that are related to living things. So here's some of the companies that we started. 27 companies this year, 30 companies a year ongoing. They do everything. Today, I'm going to really focus on protein. And just very quickly, this is the only this is like 3 slides of biology. Everybody knows what DNA is. And then maybe we know RNA. DNA is copied to RNA. And then from DNA, by a mysterious process, protein is made. I know vegans hate hearing about protein. We all have our crosses to bear, even though we know we're right. But it's kind of a thing that vegans can now get excited about, I hope. So just to tell you, protein, for those who have actually never seen protein in action, if you've never had the glorious experience of doing biochemistry, protein are the actual molecules that actually perform all of the functions of life. They hold our synaptic memories and thoughts. They change chemical energy into mechanical energy. They move us. They transform all of the food in our body to other chemicals so that we can live. They actually are the functional machines of biology. We just don't talk about them because every protein is different, and it's very difficult to characterize each one of them. But the reason that people keep giving us all a hard time about protein is because the cell is full of protein. This is a picture of the cell. So this is sort of like an image of the molecules of the cell, and it is jam-packed with little proteins. Each one of these little globules is as a separate, every one with a different shape and color is actually a different protein. Where there's about 45,000 different proteins in our genome. Any given cell has maybe 20,000 different kinds of proteins, and the cell is jam-packed with it. It's actually, well, it's as dense as meat. It's all as dense as meat, right? And there's actually about as much water in our individual cells as there is protein. And all of them are doing something crazy. So without protein, the only thing I want to say is, and I'm not trying to make anybody feel bad, but without protein, life is really not possible. Something happened at the beginning of the 20th century, and that was that people realized that they could actually help protein come about, right? So protein has one element that, so carbohydrates and lipids and fats, all of this contain plenty of carbon, plenty of oxygen, plenty of hydrogen. Those are all obtained from water and photosynthesis, right? But proteins also have a lot of nitrogen, and nitrogen cannot be gotten from photosynthesis, and that's why protein is always limited. It's always limited to how much life there is. So, beginning of the 20th century, Fritz Haber, a German scientist, discovered how to basically make biologically available nitrogen, bionitrogen, from nitrogen gas, which is 70% of the atmosphere, but it's totally inert, and hydrogen gas. And he did that on such a scale, and he used it to create fertilizer. So all these ammonia fertilizers that come out and that farmers use so much, they're all created basically from natural gas in the atmosphere. And so when that happened, the world population started to explode because more people could be created because there's more protein available. So much ammonia is made, ammonia and nitrogen fertilizer is made by the Haber process that almost, I think, 30 or 40% of all the nitrogen in all our bodies came from the Haber process. And when you go out and eat a plant from a farm, it's probably 50 to 60% been produced by this chemical process. That's why I say in the previous slide, that chemical plant's making people, because that's literally what it does. Without that, we wouldn't have the nutrients to actually make all that protein that we need. Thinking about that, since protein sort of become a limiting quantity in our food system, we can think a different way about how food gets to the table. And then I can talk about the companies and the technology and the fun stuff. So apologies. So basically, you can sort of see how it works in the sea or in the land. There are these tiny microbes, algae, or rhizomal sort of bacteria that deep in the earth where oxygen can't get to it. They actually take the nitrogen and then they start moving it up. People use the nitrogen, the bacteria and the fungi down here use the nitrogen further and further up. It goes into the plant roots, help the plants grow. Larger and larger fish eat the smaller fish and zooplankton and all these kind of things. Eventually gets to the top of the food chain. And then as we all know, sadly, some of the larger animals are eaten and taken to the dinner table. And that's how it was for thousands of years because a fisherman can't go out and gather all the little fish, just gets the big fish and so forth. And that became our typical habits. Vegans, so okay, well, let me back up. So what I'm going to talk about tonight is that before we get to the food transport problem, before we talk about formulating different kinds of food to eat, all the stuff from farm to table that we would normally think of as sort of vegan technology, I want to start thinking about the food chain as something that we can hack, something that we can reroute to create greater efficiencies in the way the earth produces food and gets it to the table. Because with another 3 or 4 billion people coming on the earth, coming online in the next 20 to 50 years, this is going to be more and more of a problem. Because what has happened is, with the Haber process, we have plenty of nitrogen, but it's all elemental. It all is down here in the bottom of the food chain, waiting for bacteria and microorganisms to utilize it, get taken in, and they'll get eaten by something larger and larger and larger until finally it can be utilized by a plant or an animal in the sea, right? That takes too long, and that's why the fish in the ocean have been getting fished down. The larger fish are almost all gone, the smaller fish are getting used, the smaller fish beyond that. The same is true with the plants, and the soil gets used up. Basically, we're taking too much time for the fertilizer and other sort of regular sort of small molecules and that get distributed from waste, recycled all the way through the many levels of the ecosystem of the world to get back to the table, right? That's the one way I want to put out about thinking about this tonight. There are other ways to think about it, but that's what we do. And so, as an example, the vegans are one of the earliest movements that try to reroute that, right? Because they're skipping the animals. They're just going from the plant directly to the dinner table, and they're sort of rerouting. They're sort of creating an extra path from here to the dinner table, and thereby bypassing the need to grow all the animals and all of the food stocks to support the animals for all the years that they live until they get harvested. So that's one way to think about it. I think everybody in this room understands that. But now, I want to take this another step further. So one of the great things about our company, where Ryan and I work, is that we don't have a single solution. We're watching many different solutions, entrepreneurs come with different solutions, and we can think about and evaluate them as how they're rerouting efficiencies through the world food ecological chain, right? And so these are some of the companies. Some of them some of these we helped started. About half of them we didn't. You can see even like Tofurkey is a company. It's like basically a vegan food company or vegetarian food company. They're sort of helping with plant-based food. There's several different categories. I want to talk about some of the categories, especially in terms of what they do. Going from the Tofurkey example, we know Hampton Creek. We probably know who knows Kite Hill, right? So everybody knows this. Kite Hill is making cheese out of nuts because they have a special enzyme that breaks the nuts down and creates a flocculant that turns into curd. Impossible Foods making a burger. It's a perfect burger we hear. I've never had one actually, but it still costs $30 a piece. So they're still working on that. Ripple's making vegetable-based milk. And New Wave Foods is our, that's a plant-based shrimp. There is not a single bit of meat in it. There's no fish at all. And Ryan told me to mention, if anybody wants to see that, this is a company run by 2 women. They're just starting to take on funding now, and they are asking for volunteers to come and help prepare a meal that they're going to be serving, and you'll be able to sort of see this stuff get made. So if you want to come see that, you can come Thursday the 25th in the evening to help them out.
So they're asking for volunteers.
They're looking for volunteers.
Interested in Oakland. They're going to be cooking up a bunch of possibly to sample some, but also to help them with putting together.
Right.
They're serving is L'Haim. Is it L'Haim?
Yeah. So yeah, they're serving. They have a big dinner on Sunday. They're serving L'Haim foods, right? Because it's not just vegans who love this kind of stuff. The rabbis who certify kosher for food showed up and they said, a Jew can have a shellfish. They were nuts about it. And they're actually going to maybe be the first distributors of the food. And so it's interesting to sort of meet the whole network of people who are interested in this kind of thing. A lot of different interests are intersecting here. It's sort of a rainbow kind of phenomenon. We took the shrimp to the Westfield Mall and dodged the guards and set up a cell phone camera and watched people eat it. 10 out of 10 people before we got thrown out of the mall by the guards could not tell it was not shrimp. They've sold shrimp to Google. They'll be showing up in the Google cafeteria sometime in the next couple months. It's the real deal. Yeah, it's fascinating. And it has the same nutritional profile as shrimp. It has the same amount of protein, right? It is in many regards indistinguishable from shrimp. Yeah.
So like, can I tell one of their main ingredients is almonds? What is there like? If you were just like break it down into a few main ingredients for the?
I don't know if I can do that, but there are more typical plant proteins in there, and they have a bunch of patents around how they create the texture of the shrimp, because that's what sort of makes it different. The color comes from the same source as the color of regular shrimp. It's astaxanthin, which is a powerful antioxidant found in algae. The algae is actually part of the recipe, for instance. So they've done a good job in trying to reproduce the mouthfeel, the texture, the flavor of the shrimp, and they've been very careful to keep everything vegan because Ryan's been watching them on a daily basis. Yeah. Never. It was not about you. Just kidding. Yeah, I was just saying you were watching them and helping them keep vegan and all that. So yeah.
Isn't the coloring come from the same thing that shrimp get it from?
Yeah.
Is someone allergic to shrimp? Could they eat this as well?
Yeah, because they're probably not allergic to the coloring. I mean, it depends on what they're allergic to, but most people are allergic to a particular protein in the shrimp. Of course, this has no shrimp protein in it. So allergies come from a specific protein from a specific organism, comes from their genome, basically. And so, since there's no shrimp in here, I'm sure almost anybody who's allergic to shrimp can eat this. I'd be really surprised. I mean, it's like eating a soybean, you know. Maybe they're allergic to soy, that'd be a problem. Yeah. This is what I kind of call this mock duck tech, but it's basically, it's just a very evolved version of fake meat that we have in the Chinese food store, something that, you know, we've all tried and maybe found wanting. But this is designed to really, just like the folks here at Eatsa, right? I mean, the first generation of vegan foods discovered that people won't eat the food just because it's vegan, or most people will not, right? And that the trick is now to sort of find food that's healthy and does not include meat. That's very, very appealing, right? And so that's what's motivating Hampton Creek. That's what's motivating people here at Eatsa. That's what motivates a lot of you guys. How do you actually change someone's mind? Well, maybe we shouldn't wait to change people's mind, right? I think that's a very common thread of thought. And so all the plant-based food companies are just sort of looking to basically recreate the world and the food that we eat in a way that's appealing, but also sustainable and healthy, right? So if they can't join you, you'll just sort of like, they can pretend that they're still eating the meat, right? So next kind of company, cultured meat company, there are a couple of them. Modern Meadow, they also do leather over there in New York, in Brooklyn, I think. Memphis Meats is a company that started here just 5 months ago. And they're a bunch of cell culture scientists. One of the founders is a professor of cardiology at University of Minnesota. He spent his whole life being a vegetarian. One of the chief scientists is a lifelong vegan. He grew up on a farm, a chicken farm. Well, maybe he wasn't lifelong, but he became vegetarian, vegan very early in his life. And he's been dreaming about this for 10 years. And so What they do is they take livestock with just a syringe. They can extract some cells. The animal's not harmed any more than taking a sample of blood might harm us. The stem cells can be then propagated in bioreactors, just basically large brewing vats, and meat can come out. The cells multiply, it's muscle cells, and it's real meat. What Memphis Meats did to prove this is they actually created a meatball. They've actually created several meatballs over the last few months. That is a $3,000 meatball, but 4 years ago, that would have been a $300,000 meatball. The prices are dropping, and they have a plan to drop that meat to commodity prices for the grocery store in the next 5 to 7 years. It's going to happen. Yes?
How many times do they have to inject the cow? Like once they've done it once, do they never need to do it again?
Probably they'll need to do it regularly, but if they really cared, they could probably just do it once and just like propagate the cells and just store them over and over again. I think that they'll probably want to keep a few cows around and just continue to pull them. But it's just a little, I mean, you know,
It's
the
a
cow.
muscle biopsy,
The
right?
cow does. It's a muscle biopsy. It's a lot like drawing blood from that we might do if we were like getting your annual checkup. It's not a.
Are the cows shareholders?
The cows are not shareholders, but
But
they do avoid certain. They seem to prefer employment at Memphis Meats as opposed to other cattle industry occupations. I think
Question over here.
Yeah.
Is that still considered vegan?
Well, I think that depends on you guys, right? But all I can say is, without naming any names, a lot of the funders for these companies are vegan, right?
Yeah, and I'm a vegan.
Yeah.
As soon as there are a few little components that they gotta remove, but I'll eat it as soon as it's just animal cells. You don't have to actually kill the animal, and once you get the original biopsy, that's it. In theory, you shouldn't have to go back to the animal.
So we know that this is going to be a personal decision for people. Some people just don't like meat, and they don't want to actually have anything that's meat, and they may have health problems.
Not after the biopsy. You can anesthetize the animal so that it doesn't feel pain on the biopsy. There might be a little discomfort.
It literally is just a syringe draw.
But
It's like
I think for vegans in particular, Ron, the most exciting thing is, we're not talking about lifetimes before we can remove the use of animals for meat. We're talking years, right?
years.
So and now we're on a commercial time scale, right?
Yeah, because the company's not going to live lifetimes. It's going to
How long
live
does
years.
it take to go from?
It takes about. This meatball took about 7 days to grow.
7 days.
Yeah. So here's the beauty of it. You can outcompete the industrial factory processes, right?
Yep.
Financially, right?
Right.
So that means, in theory, you can decimate their market, right?
Yeah, it's a real replacement business plan.
So as a vegan, I probably wouldn't be your target market. Like I don't want to eat meat, but for people who want to eat meat, and I know a lot of people like this that are very health conscious, but they believe that they need meat to be healthy and or to feel energized or whatever. And I know those people would never eat something because they would believe this to be unhealthy or unnatural.
Right.
So what can you say about that? Like is there any marketing plan?
I think there is. I think that all of these foods. This is actually kind of a little trial run to sort of start talking about dialogues. It's all technology is strange at first.
Yeah.
And an example is the automobile, right? The first people said like, what are we going to do without our horses? Where are we going to put our horses? We love our horses. And I think that what we're going to see, I'm going to talk a little about how the technology interplays with the food system here. But one thing that they did is they show that, look, if you take any type of beef, you can take organic beef from whole food, and you can streak it on a bacterial culture plate, and it will grow thick with bacteria in 8 hours. This stuff is completely sterile, except for the meat cells. You see what I mean? The food safety and the transparency and how this is provided will, in the end, exceed that possible for livestock. The healthy part of the meat can be demonstrated, and I think that is a strong selling point for all of this stuff, because when you've got something grown in a vat and in a controlled system, you can track everything that goes into it and actually run QC on everything that comes out. And it's very different from that kind of food. Sorry, we had you first. Then.
So to grow it that quickly, I presume there must be some sort of growth hormone or the petri dish itself must be providing nutrients.
There are some. So typically what happens is these guys are blown, what Ryan's been talking about is these guys are grown in a form of blood. And those contain the blood. Remember that the blood and the tissue around it doesn't just contain growth hormones. It contains all of the signals to the cells that say live. And so all meat, all vegetables, all things contain growth hormones. The question is whether that's at an appropriate level. But they don't use bovine growth hormone.
Do they edit the genes? Is that how?
No, they don't have to.
Because the division of the cells is,
The cells can be encouraged just the way people can be encouraged to divide, reproduce, sometimes at greater and lesser rates by the conditions. They can do the cells the same way. So none of these have been modified. Yeah. So, but I want to talk about GMO because we will talk about that. Yeah. And then you, sorry.
So where are most of the costs from? Like, why is it still so expensive? What's the beginning?
Okay. Well, first of all, the fetal bovine serum that they use right now is incredibly expensive. It's like it's like I think it's $600 for a liter bottle, and so that's a lot of money. They're going to work on replacing that, and when that's made cheaper,
That's why it's not vegan.
and hence why it's not vegan. After that, it'll be pretty much all vegan. It'll be mostly mineral supplements plus a few sort of protein supplements that are not from an animal or from blood or from a killed animal. Yeah.
I was wondering, so with it being grown in such a sterile way, that means there should be like no danger whatsoever of just eating it raw.
You could eat it raw. Sure, why not? We eat beef raw, and even high quality beef tartare is got stuff in there you just don't really want to know about. And we're more robust than that, but this will probably be some of the best raw meat that someone can eat if they are so inclined. I would imagine so. Yeah.
How about the cholesterol and saturated fat? Will it
Actually, so that's an interesting fact. So when you grow muscle cells, they don't have the fat cells in them. And so to make the meatball, they actually added vegetable fats. And so the food, just as like the web is not the way it was 10 years ago, and our phones are not the same way, there is differences from technology, but the potential is there, just with all new generations of technology, to actually make things better, right? And so we can actually replace all the steroids and all of the sort of unhealthy, saturated fats and so forth. We're going to replace them with other fats. And that was done with this meatball, and people really liked it. There was a taste test. It was actually in the Wall Street Journal, and they wanted to eat it all. They wanted to eat the meatball entirely. So yeah.
So this is still animal protein, and it's animal protein are acidic in nature. So when they get in our body has to neutralize it, borrowing phosphorus from our bones. So this would still mean that it's not helping our bones in the body.
Well, you could add a calcium supplement or a basic. You could just always put a basic component into the meat and balance the pH.
So using the pH would be then not.
You can change the pH to the meat if you want. I think you could do that for any meat though. Yeah, sorry. Okay, I'm gonna two more questions and then we're gonna try the next slide. Actually, you haven't talked
I
yet.
was just gonna say, I was gonna make a comment on that. I think that this is a great choice for like ethical and like environmental reasons, but for health reasons, like it's still new. So just to throw that out there.
No, I don't. So this is something I want to put in front of everybody. I know not everyone in this room is going to want to eat this, and I don't want you to.
Yeah, no, totally. I think it's
But-
a great idea for ethical reasons.
Yeah, I think what we're all concerned about, what like inspired me sitting here listening to the announcements, that we all care about what's going to happen to this planet, and that's a large motivation for what we're doing. There are other health reasons to be vegan as well, but we all know at the end of the day, when you go to bed, you're like, for every one of me, there's like 1,000 other people that are just like not doing the earth a service, right? And so this is about changing something. And I think the vegans and the ethical animal people, they overlap substantially, right? And so those people are definitely much more motivated to help out, and they've actually been also funding to a great extent. They've been publicizing and stuff. But it's I think where we're all going to come together is how can we all live in the future? How can we all get along? How can we avoid massive food shortages, and that's really the appeal the point I want to make tonight is that, you know, when there's another 4 billion people on the planet right now, the average income I think on the earth is like $4 a day, right? How is that really going to work? Because we can all go vegan, but there's just a lot of people out there, and so how can that system be rebuilt so that we can all sort of like take it easy and sort of not worry about it so much? I think that's to me the biggest benefit. Yeah.
So just to address what you said, I'm vegan and I'm super excited about it. Actually, I'd like to actually go to the investors in that. But I'm not like that excited about eating it because I don't know there's any their health reasons. But we actually do not know what's the impact of pure animal protein. We just know that like meat in general populations like creates health problems. But that might behave like it might be because of the saturated fats, it might be because we don't know if it's going to be good or bad. I mean, I would guess probably better to stick to plant protein, but you know, there's so many people that are just not going to go off animal protein in the next tens of years. So that's like a way of solving that.
Oh yeah, totally. I didn't mean it that way. I just meant for health reasons it might not. If you're vegan for health reasons, it might not be a total substitute. I totally am in support for the ethical environment.
Yeah, I totally believe in the food rainbow. Like
Yeah.
you can sort of see, we have multiple classes of solutions that we fund because we know that it's about creating enough channels for everybody to get through. And I think that we all, I think you feel that. And thank you for the comment. Yeah. Okay. All right.
I basically answered like half of my questions, but I was just curious about the actual environmental effects. Like, I'm guessing it probably uses less water than actual beef.
So beef, who knows how many gallons of water go to a pound of beef?
5,000.
6,000. I think it's close to 2,500. I thought it was a little lower than that, but it's an enormous amount, right? And mostly because the cow, the beef steer is what, 3 or 4 years old by the time. So you're feeding the thing every day, and it's living in probably not very good conditions while it's doing it, and then you know, then it's slaughtered. This stuff probably uses. I mean, right now it's probably in the order of 10 to 20 gallons per liter per pound.
Well, that's not including the cow itself that is providing the.
Yes, but that one cow.
Because that cow itself takes
Yes,
up another.
but actually that's true. But that cow can probably produce tons and tons of meat, and so it's a rounding error.
Per pound of meat.
It's a rounding error.
Yeah.
Fortunate.
And
And you know what? My calculation is not very precise.
That number accounts for the cow, actually.
Does it really?
It does, yeah.
Thank you.
How long is the process for making meat again?
Well, it really depends, but this meatball is made in 7 days.
How much of that meatball is the actual cell biology?
I think it's about 30 to 40%.
How much?
30 to 40%. There's fats and there's fillers because meatballs have sort of breaded stuff in them.
What I think is absolutely fascinating is that those who suffer from gluten or soy allergies and are interested in the vegan diet or interested in ethics, they would probably see a great
It's another protein
option.
source for people who can't really get protein other ways. Definitely. I mean, you know, we all know that vegan and sort of like is just another label, and there's lots of different people there for a lot of different reasons, and they have different needs. And that's why we don't have just a single company or a single kind of company. I am now going to talk. I'm going to use a 3-letter word. Okay. So let's talk about things which do have genetic modification in them. Okay. So everybody here uses tools, and everybody knows that the neo-Nazis also have a website. Tools can be used for any purpose. They can be used a positive way or negative way. I'll be the first to admit that GMO has not always been used, genetic science has not been used always in the most beneficial way to create food. But I would argue that there is an opportunity here. And so most of the foods in the last class of companies we'll talk about are using yeast or bacteria to create food, or something related to food that goes into food. So I'm going to start with some examples that are already out there, some of which you don't partake of, but I think you'll at least find them familiar. So we all know about beer. Beer is made by yeast. That yeast depends on genetic mutants. They're naturally created mutants. In other words, people like somebody in Germany, a brewmaster in Germany will pick out some yeast they like, make some beer, and say, this is better beer, I'm going to use this yeast. Heineken's yeast strain is highly guarded and proprietary. Nobody can touch it. It's different than any other yeast you're gonna get. Okay, is that dangerous? I know that's a little bit of a softball sort of example. Does anybody know anyone with diabetes? Right. Okay. Very few vegans know they're diabetic. That's fine. So, I studied diabetes research when I was in graduate school, and in the 1920s it was a death sentence. If your child had diabetes, they were going to die, and they discovered insulin a little bit later, and it took they isolated insulin from a pancreas, and they showed that it was actually useful to curing diabetes, and then they had to get it from pig pancreases. It would take like 100 pig pancreases to produce enough insulin to treat someone for a couple weeks. Okay. Then in the 70s, 30 years later, many pigs later, a company, Genentech, actually managed to put that gene into E. coli, and it produced insulin from bacteria. And now there are no pigs dying to make insulin. Those people would die without it. Nobody has ever complained about the toxicity of GMO insulin. Okay, frankly, those insulins have been modified in different sequences that are quite diverse from the original gene that we have in our bodies. That helps the diabetics manage their long-term blood sugar levels. They can make strong and weak insulins to mix them to sort of depend on what their meal patterns are, to duplicate, to try to compensate for all the biological things that are happening and the rates at which they eat and how their personal makeup is. Okay, so diabetics have been using genetically modified insulin for decades to manage themselves and stay healthier. So there's nothing, I would put forth as an example of how there's nothing intrinsically bad about mutating the DNA of a gene. Sometimes it's very useful. I will also concede that sometimes it's not very useful and certainly doesn't always improve the quality of whatever it is it's working in. It's like another tool. We all know in Europe, they do things right there and they do not allow any GMO foods. There are exceptions, however. So when they make cheese, I know nobody here eats cheese, but still a lot of Europeans eat cheese, right? And does anybody know how cheese gets made? Nobody? Nobody cares here. Okay, yeah.
Culturing bacteria. Cheese?
They what?
Culturing bacteria.
They culture bacteria. Actually, that's not quite. That's the new way. The old way, you have milk, and do you know what you put in the milk? Where does rennet come from?
From stone.
Yeah, you scrape the lining of a goat or a cow, right? And then you put it in with the milk, and the milk curdles. So what they decided to do was to put there's only one enzyme in the rennet that actually is responsible for the milk. They took that gene out of the bacteria and they put it in another bacterium and they produced the rennet separately. And now they just pour a little GMO rennet into the milk and all the cheese in Europe gets made that way now. That's a lot of cheese, right? But think about this as a substitute for an animal product, right? That feels quite different, right? But the reason it's working is because nobody talks about it, right? So we just ignore something that's unpleasant. That's usually how we deal with food. So recently, a company called Evolva had a similar controversy, and I think this is where we really have to start. I mean, people here are very good at sort of digging into the details about food. Sometimes we have to dig into food we just don't care about to really understand it. But Evolva managed to get all of the genes to produce vanillin into a bacterium, and they could produce artificial vanillin. And people, I remember when that happened, they sort of said like, why do we need this? Like, we already have artificial vanilla, we've got lots of artificial vanilla, and it's GMO, that must be bad. And so when that happened, the company went back and said, hey, does anybody know how artificial vanilla gets made normally, if it's not made by Evolva?
Beavers.
Huh? That's an old way. I'm not sure that really worked, but there used to be a beaver gland that was used to make vanilla at some point. Well, let me also back up. Does anybody know where real vanilla comes from? Beans? Where does the bean come from? An orchid. It is an air plant that dwells only in trees in Madagascar and some parts of the Caribbean, and now some parts of South America. You have to plant a tree. You have to plant flower up in a tree and wait for about 10 years, and it produces a few beans a year. There is not enough orchids to supply all the children the vanilla ice cream they want to eat. It's a limited resource, and you're lucky if you get real vanilla like once a month, right? So imitation vanilla is used for almost every vanilla product that we eat. The current way of making artificial vanillin is to take sawdust, which is full of some polyphenols, and they break it up with chemicals, and they do a petrochemical process, and they produce the vanillin from it. So that's what Evolve is replacing. So we talk about, I think when we sort of think about all of the opportunities there are for improving the food system, and we use the right tool at the right time, we can see that some GMO products have a clear mission that is a little more palatable when we actually understand what it actually is replacing and the economics thereof. So now I'm going to talk about, with that, we're going to talk about some of the other GMO companies we have been dealing with, okay, and talk about what their context is. So these three companies are in our family, our portfolio family. There's Move Free, there's Clara Foods, and there's Gelzen. Okay, Move Free is making milk, right? And they're able to produce this from yeast. None of these products in the United States are GMO. Why? Because the organisms that have the genes from bovine milk products, from egg white proteins from a chicken, or the collagen for gelatin, they're all spun out. The actual organisms that produce them and all of the tricky modified DNA are not in the product. They're actually separated from them and put away somewhere and destroyed. So there is no DNA in these products. So that's called a bioequivalent. And what's left is, on a molecule for molecule basis, identical to the natural product that you're eating. With the added benefit that you can control the quality. There's no bacteria in the milk, right? There's no there's no eggs broken to make the egg whites. There's no chickens used to make the egg white, right? I will not even talk about how gelatin's made for a moment, because it's kind of gross. So these companies are trying to improve, they're basically removing animals from the bioeconomy, is what's happening there. And they're doing for the same economic reasons that we're all trying to move animals out, because the costs are hidden, and there are cost advantages to be made, environmental gains to be made, and sustainability arguments for them, as well as economic arguments. Clara is making egg whites. They can make meringues. They can make basically vegan egg whites. The vegan egg whites can be used to make better products like pasta and so forth like that, feel more natural, right? Gelzen, who knows how gelatin? I know nobody eats gelatin. Does anyone know why they don't eat gelatin, or where does gelatin come from? Yes. I'm not talking about it. Hooves. Actually, every bit of the animal you do not eat gets put in the bath of acid, and it's kept there for, depending on the industrial process and the heat involved, can be kept there for a week or two, and then all of the dross is taken away and it's filtered out and spun down and clarified, and what that comes off is collagen, which is used to make the gelatin. It's really just sort of like the dregs of the animal. Collagen is in makeup. I hope I didn't spoil anybody's day there. They don't use they don't use cow makeup. They don't use cow collagen there. Why? Because they're afraid of the mad cow disease, right? And so they can only use fish collagen. So there's a lot of obvious, even the people in the industry using collagen are afraid of various sort of side products for the collagen, and it's kind of thing. These guys completely pure, and they can do crazy things. So these gelatin gummies were they partly contain mastodon collagen. They actually found the sequence of the mastodon gene, put it in the bacteria, and they de-extincted the animals. That's actually eating mastodon when you eat those guys.
Was that just for flair? Like, what's
They just did it for fun. They just did it for fun. But I'll tell you something. Once we sort of like get a little bit more relaxed about understanding what these mutations mean for GMO type work, there's only a couple of amino acids. There's only a couple of mutants that are responsible for allergenicity in eggs, right? So you kind of have hypoallergenic eggs, right? It's not a problem. And gelatin can actually be, you can actually create new kinds of food. You can actually engineer food on a molecular level. And so we're learning a lot about the kinds of food that are available that will create new experiences, like mastodon gummies. The last slide, for all the tech people here, and for people who know tech. So this is the real opportunity, and I hope it's something that we all find exciting. I find it exciting. The guys at work call it Shigeta as well. It's my last name, but I'm just going to call it technology. Food is technology. When food really becomes technology, it experiences a contraction in price like Moore's law. And so that doesn't happen to every application of technology. It's happened for computer hardware. It doesn't happen for websites, right? You can get a 10-15% improvement in efficiency with a website if you work hard with your engineering team, but you're not going to see tripling every year, right? You're not going to see acceleration like that. You have to work hard, eventually get up to $150 million in revenue, everything's great, but when you have a strain of bacteria yeast that produce protein, you will never get lower productivity again, right? You can use that same strain and you always get the same. But then if you work hard, you can get it to produce more protein. So this is what we have from industry data. I've modeled this sort of price per pound for some protein produced by the yeast, right? First you start off, and it's incredibly hot. This is probably too low, maybe $1,000 a pound, right? But as you start doubling the productivity of the yeast and the bacteria strains, the prices fall. And if you wait 20 or 30 years, the product is the same product, but it's cheaper and cheaper and cheaper to eat. And so there's a real potential for feeding everybody, right? And again, as an investor and a venture capitalist, I know that it's a horrible thing to hear somebody say, we're going to feed everybody. That is not really a good business plan. But in this case, it just turns out to be, because the company becomes economically viable, can sell beneath the current commodity rate in a few years, it's a great business plan. It's actually just a fortunate side effect of the power of biotechnology that eventually we can have food security for everybody. And that's something that we're really lacking in some of the natural food that we have, that we prefer to eat. I feed that to my kids. I hope everybody here eats good food. But to be honest, not everybody's going to be able to do that in the next 20, 30 years. And the question is, what about them? And how can we sort of assure that there are no problems from that for other people as well?
So, do you have any idea of what the value of the x-axis is?
The value of x-axis, this is about, well, this is all kind of a fudgy model, but this is 30 years. This is 30 years on my model, right? Generally, by the time something's 15 years old, it's really, really efficient, right? Yes?
Could you tell us a little bit about your firm in terms of how companies get funded? You said 30 a year. Are they all seed? Do you do follow-on?
We are, okay, very good question. So we're an early seed accelerator. We have applications on our website, and I have cards. And the application takes 15 minutes to fill in. We have 2 classes a year, 15 classes each. We fund at a significant rate, like I think 8 to 10% of applicants get funded, so that's pretty good. We offer $250,000 investment, $200,000 of it's cash, and then $50,000 for a 4-month program. You come and hang out near the Powell Street Park. You're there every day with a bunch of awesome companies. Everybody's working really hard. We have a demo day after that. It's about a third investors. About 400 people came to the last one. The video's online. I suggest you take a look if you're interested. We only take companies that are really aiming to change the world, the really powerful biotechnology companies. And for that reason, we've attracted a lot of people who want to meet them, and they've had good conversations. You may want to ask Seth about that, but that's how I feel about it. We follow on. We do follow on investments. We do pro rata follow on. So if you're good enough to get an investment, we want to support you, but we can't signal by picking our favorites. We have had a tremendous success this last time. We're approaching 50% full funding from the last class. And beyond that, there's some investment for most of the rest of them.
How many years have you done it?
1 year. 27 companies in 1 year.
So the total portfolio is?
27 companies right now.
Our total portfolio now, March 1st, as of March 1st, will be
42
companies.
Yeah. So we have 15 more companies coming in in 2 weeks.
And we're going to continue at scale. We're now the largest biotech accelerator, full stop.
Yeah, our portfolio is larger than Y Combinator biotech. So, and because we're focused on biotech, as you can see, Ryan and I are very hands-on. We come and work after hours, and the program is very intense. There's 3 of us.
There's 3 of us, yeah.
One of us is not here.
Yeah.
I don't know what's up with him. He's beating people up at the gym right now, probably. All right, well.
And the term sheets are just standard, do you have a template for terms or?
I'll broadly, well, you want to just describe it
Yeah,
broadly?
just
Sure.
very roughly, it's about 250K, 14% of the company. That's it.
That's basically.
Every company gets basically the
It's
same.
exactly.
It's exactly the same.
There's no negotiating.
Yeah, if you start wavering on that, you're like negotiating for a year to get the class. And it's just
Everyone has their own specific flavor of terms and conditions they like. So we basically just give them flat yes or no, and then that's it.
That's right. That's right. We also have a meetup of our own, San Francisco Biotechnology meetup, and we're going to actually have a twice a year food meetup. I think next one's going to be in March. Just our companies talking about this stuff more in depth. Everybody's welcome, and I'd be happy to bring some of them back here at some point as
And
well.
we're incredibly passionate. Hopefully, it comes through with Ron's presentation of the post-animal bioeconomy. We really want to build out anywhere we see the use of animals. We want to remove them using biology. So that's really, that's part of our mission.
It's a full 20% of our portfolio.
On the buy side, post incubation.
Yes.
How does someone go about that?
Talk with us, interact with, we're happy to introduce investors. We're happy to introduce investors and partners to the team specifically during the batch time. We also have a demo day. You're welcome to come to the demo day. That was a successful demo day February 4th. There's been a lot of coverage of some of the companies that were at the demo day. We'll have another demo day at the end of June, right?
I think so.
Yeah. And so that's our next batch, which is and we'll have a few post-animal bioeconomy folks.
And some of these companies are hiring. So obviously New Wave's interested in meeting people right now. So there's opportunities for people who just sort of have a lot of skills.
Clara Foods is hiring, Memphis Meats is hiring, and shortly New Wave will be hiring. Not yet.
Shortly New Wave will be hiring. But they're looking for introductions right now. You can go help them with their kitchen.
So after your demo day, that then goes to Series A?
No, it's seed. So we really view our investment as pre-seed, and then we view it as a seed.
So they're looking for between $500,000 and $2 million.
And every one of your companies will be open to your.
Usually, yes. Yeah, I mean, they'll all be open, but some of them are very, very popular, and so they closed out earlier. Some will start. They're still closing out their round.
Yeah, about half the class is raising after demo day, half the class raised before demo day.
We love mission-driven investors, so that's really what we engage with. So on the vegan side and on the post-animal bioeconomy side, that's a lot of the companies we try and build in that space. But when it comes to other things, like let's say people are passionate about cancer and cancer therapeutics, we interact with investors who are particularly passionate about that.
And for the more subtle investors, we have several companies. We make investment companies that are tool companies that will create platforms on which this economy can stand, so they don't have to re-engineer the whole strain engineering stuff over and over again. We want companies to be able to start almost at commercial production levels, for instance. Wouldn't that be nice, right? No risk.
And it's a range of areas too, right? So it's cancer, neuroscience, tools companies,
biodata,
food,
materials, even instrumentation.
Anything
we do
that
everything.
accelerates biology, we'll usually be funding. As long as typically we look at 10x improvement on current technologies.
Well, I think with that, if people want to talk to us more about our investment strategy and so forth, please come talk to us. I really enjoyed coming here and just meeting you all. Thanks for listening.